this match, who do you like between Jaeyun and Casper? Can Casper do something like that, or is Jaeyun gonna get away with murder like he generally does versus me, taking a third base? Or what do you even expect from Jaeyun? He's somebody that can pull out almost anything.
Yeah, you can put Jaeyun on a lot of styles and builds, but I don't know, Casper really impressed me last game. He played a very, very, very solid game, completely kind of out macro Dragon. Now, you know, going up against Jaeyun, if he can have the same kind of result in TVZ. Now, TVZ is a bit harder than TVP in the sense that you can't just macro, you also have to micro. It's much more tight on execution. So we'll see if that translates to this matchup. And Jaeyun himself is actually really strong, you know, just in general, but especially in this matchup as well. So we'll have to see. Reap the Storm is going to be the first map between Jaeyun and Casper. So let's get right into it.
So in the top right, coming off of a really solid win versus one of the best Protoss players in the foreign scene, it is Casper.
And in the 6 o'clock, we've got Jaeyun in the orange Zerg. And yeah, Reap the Storm, definitely not a map you want to see as Terran, I feel like. But at the same time, this is a good mech map. This is a good mech map.
This is a pretty good mech map, but I'm not too sure if GrimeBoss is a mech player. I remember the one time that I did see him play TVZ, or maybe I've seen it a couple times, but the one that always stands out is just the one where he just 5 racks off of literally no defense. And luckily for him, Zerg didn't build any lings.
Oh.
Now this looks like an 8 racks, and I actually like Casper's chances versus someone like Jaeyun because Casper's going to bring it to you. Like, he's going to be in your face, and one of the hardest aspects about dealing with Terran as a Zerg player is managing your whoa. Is this a wall? Okay, this is going to be a wall. For a second I thought this was going to be a 2 racks, but one of the hardest parts of dealing with the Terran as a Zerg is managing your drones versus somebody that is super aggro like Casper. You may be able to hold off the attack, but it's the follow-up that actually gets you. You know, like when 111 was very popular, you were talking about how it isn't even necessarily the first attack that kills the Zerg player. It's the secondary attack because it just keeps coming. Their econ is so ramped up, it's so powerful. If the Zerg doesn't manage their own econ, they're in big time trouble.
Yeah, and 8-racks in general, look, he's not going to go for the gas variation where you go for a very quick factory. So this is actually a very stable build. Like, it's not even all in, it's not cheesy. This is just an alternative way to play. It has counter, you know, just because against 12 hatch obviously is the most ideal scenario, specifically against 2 hatch, because then Zerg has fewer drones to work with since they got the gas so much faster. And look, Jaeyun knows it's 8 racks, cancels the gas very smartly because you don't need that gas against this, and actually 3 hatch is much better. So Jaeyun gets a really good scout, and you know, GrimeBoss, he's gonna come out here. Now he has to get some damage done with this. You want to get a couple of drones. The ideal number is 4. If you get 3, you're happy with that. 2, you know, 2, you're definitely behind. So it's gonna come down to the micro here. Now, can Jaeyun kill this Marine? And this is really good for Jaeyun, actually. He's getting really good engagement onto these SCVs, not taking too much damage. He's on the high ground. He's gonna get around the Marines. He's gonna lose 1 drone, goes down. 2 drones go down. 3 drones go down, but he kills both Marines, and he's gonna kill this Marine as well. So I honestly feel like this was a pretty even trade. You know, I can't really tell. I feel like that's a pretty even trade, Nayok, and I don't know how you feel about it.
I think that's an okay trade, and after seeing the drone surround on the Marines, I thought for sure that this was just going to be a complete wipe and Terran get absolutely nothing. So Casper did a really good job when it mattered to focus down a couple of those drones because they were right on top of the Marines. Now we do see Casper is going into a somewhat fast gas as a follow-up. It's still on 1 barracks. There is no, he does have a command center, but this looks like it may potentially be delayed mech, but that is something that's very dangerous. If Zerg suspects that you're going for that, all of a sudden play like 2 hatch Hydra even works. Lurker busts are very dangerous. Now, I don't know if Casper is going to pull that out, but the gas timing looks like it could potentially be that.
I wonder if Jaeyun's just going to throw down a Hydralisk then. If he throws down a Hydralisk then, that would be such a sick read. this wall here from Casper, I mean, it's link tight, but all the units, okay, and actually Jaeyun's gonna go for the lair. So if you went for something like a Hydra Bust, I feel like that would have been an insta win against something like this wall here, because the Marines pop out on the other side of the map, or on the other side of the wall rather, and it would be just so hard to defend and repair the wall, and there would be so many Hydras coming in, while basically, you know, Casper would only be able to be making vultures. So he doesn't even get the scout off. He does see that there's a sunken, which is a nice thing to see considering, well, the thing is, here's the thing, right? Jaeyun actually cleaned up those Marines without having to make too many lings. So overall, I actually think Zerg is actually in a really good spot. He didn't make that sunken just because he only ended up making 4 Zerglings, and, you know, to cover for maybe vulture follow-up. But I feel like Jaeyun's in a good spot now. The thing is, build-wise, going straight for the lair and into the spire, this is going to be very good for GrimeBoss.
Yeah, I actually think GrimeBoss is the one at an advantage right now, because the third base has been delayed quite a bit for Jaeyun. Luckily, he's going to take it relatively quickly for the opener. But Casper's somebody that will... Okay, this eBay... I think this is a mistake to show the eBay, because sure, even though GrimeBoss isn't building any units at his racks, it could still be racks in the main. But with the eBay here, all Jaeyun has to see is whether the eBay is blinking or not. If it's not blinking, for sure this isn't bio. There's no way somebody's playing bio without upgrades. So now Jaeyun's going to have an easy read onto what this actually is. Now, GrimeBoss I see has started to put down 3 or 4 factories, so this is going to be a massive Goliath timing from him. And when you start having critical mass Goliaths, you know, 20, 30 Goliaths coming at you, you've got to have a ton of Mutalisks or a ton of Hydras to actually match them. It looks like GrimeBoss is going to continue to put on the pressure. This is actually going to be a vulture run by. Let's see how many drones he can actually get at the net.
Yeah, and this is coming at a really weird timing, because the Mutalisks are basically going to be hatching. So Jaeyun's going to have just the Sunken for defense and the SimCity. Man, Casper, I really like how he's playing both these games. He's actually such a sick player, and he's going to come in at such a good time. Now, that's a 6 SimCity from Jaeyun, but he's still going to lose a lot of drones there. Really annoying, and as you said, Nayokin, Jaeyun's third hatchery, his third base was delayed, so it's not like Jaeyun has a lot of econ to work with. Meanwhile, GrimeBoss is going that kind of delayed mech, which surprisingly it's just so strong economically, and so I definitely have to revise. I mean, at this point, obviously Casper is in such a good position, but you know, Casper, honestly, he's sick good, man. He's playing really well, getting those drones, getting his units up. Now he's gonna have enough. Look, he already has 4 Goliaths, 3 factories going. Dude, this is like the dream spot for Terran. Now I wonder if he's gonna go, it looks like he's gonna go for maybe a 1-1 timing, or a very strong early +1 timing at least. I wonder if he's gonna go for more of a turtle style, or just a 2-base timing attack style. What do you think? It looks like he's probably going for 2-base.
This is Casper. It doesn't even matter if I see his base. This is 100% going to be a timing. And I'm reminded of a game where he actually did the same thing. He just builds so many Goliaths off of 2 base. This is going to be +1. And luckily for Jaeyun, his third base is on high ground, so he can at least spam a ton of Sunkens there. He's going to have to spam a ton of Sunkens at his nat also. Okay, that's not the ideal Sunken placement, but the only way he's going to be able to hold this, I think, is spam Sunken somewhere and just hope that his econ on the third bases can kick in. There's no way he can build Hydras or Mass Mutas to run this over. This is 4 fact. A lot of times when Terrans go for a timing with like 12 or so Goliaths with +1, it's only off of 2 facts. So if you think that in general it's going to be like 12 to 15 Goliaths, this is probably going to be 20 to 25 Goliaths, simply because he has double the production. Like, this is just going to be a devastating attack coming in from Casper.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like, you know, if you really want to crack open Sunkens, even if it's in very small numbers, I mean, you still need that tank. You know, once that 1 Sunken or 2 Sunkens get into the fight with a bunch of mutas and stuff, I mean, you could have like 40 trillion Goliaths, but somehow those Sunkens just impale everything down. So you know, this is looking good for Casper, but at the same time, I will say this: Jaeyun is very strong against mech, and his macro is impeccable. So if Casper does not hit the timing properly, Jaeyun's just gonna snowball out of control, and Casper's actually going for a hidden third base.
You don't say. Casper with a third base? Unbelievable. But it is very, very dicey to go for a timing. There's a reason that there aren't really that many timing attacks with mech play these days, because it's kind of like you win the game with it or you're in big time trouble. And Zergs have gotten so good with backstabs with their mutas to just erase mineral lines and then deal with the army, or buy time to get up queens, or buy time to get up enough hydras to actually overwhelm it. Now we actually see Casper is doing some type of hybrid move where he's gone a lot of Goliaths, but he's also getting his science facility, so he is actually going to be transitioning into +2 weapon relatively quickly. So this is kind of weird, because it looked like for sure this was going to be a timing, but also last game it looked like for sure he's going to attack with this FD, and it never happened. So he may be assuming that, okay, Jaeyun's building up his defense quite a bit, and instead I'm just going to macro, but we actually don't see that. Jaeyun really didn't overbuild Sunkens anywhere. He's just continuing to power. Look at the drone to SCV count, 42 to 50. That's actually pretty good for Zerg.
Yeah, I feel like Jaeyun's slowly getting into a nice position. He was getting his +1 air.
Dead base.
+1
Oh
attack.
no! Catastrophe! And the gas is just barely out of range. He's missed it by like a pixel. Oh, and he missed his SCV transfer. Oh, okay. He saw it. Did he actually see it though? No, he didn't actually see it. So nothing going right for Jaeyun this game, and everything going well for Casper. That's going to be a free third base, and it's a free third base with a gas, which is just going to make his mech army even stronger.
Yeah, but here's the one thing I have with Casper. I mean, you know, he was playing amazingly, but you know, Terran mech, it's not just pure Goliath. You know, he literally has only Goliaths, and I mean, Goliaths are strong early, but you really want to get into tanks. Tanks are what are really strong about mech, and you really want to start making vessels. So this is only Goliaths here now. If Jaeyun takes this fight, it's probably going to be okay for GrimeBoss, but as time goes by,
I think this is an amazing fight for Jaeyun.
Yeah, it could be. He's hitting right before there are any tanks, and actually, this is such a good composition for Jaeyun, because the Hydralisks are not getting touched, and they're outputting a ridiculous amount of damage, while the Mutalisks are basically tanking most of it, and he's just going to be able to break through here. No, you're totally right, Nyokin. Because there are no tanks, I mean, Jaeyun's getting such value. Even if he doesn't end the game here, he basically is resetting the Terran mech army, and behind this, he's going to get his fourth. Now, the problem with this situation for Jaeyun is that he did miss that third base. So now, I mean, Casper's on 3 base. He's going to have sick income to kind of rebuild his army that usually you wouldn't have as Terran. And Jaeyun's only going to be on 4 bases, but he doesn't even have that 4th base up and running. So, you know, that was a good trade for Jaeyun, but was it enough?
I think the trade was actually kind of so-so for both players, because even though the Goliath count got reset quite a bit, also Jaeyun lost like 20 mutalisks there. That's a lot of mutas to lose. But Jaeyun, in typical Jaeyun fashion, has started to power really hard. He's on like 7 hatcheries now. He's got his 4th base up. Vulture run by gonna wipe out a handful of drones. A really nice catch from Casper there, but he shouldn't be feeling that great, seeing that Zerg has gotten up 4 bases now. Meanwhile, he's still only on 3, but one of the saving graces for him is his SCV count is really killer, up at 63. He needs to start thinking about taking top, middle, or the mineral only, though. And something that you were mentioning, the lack of tanks, well, that's not going to be a problem for much longer, because he's going triple or quadruple add-on. So if the trade we thought was kind of pretty good for Jaeyun last time with the mutas and hydras, that's not going to be a similar scenario if he goes in for his next attack. And also, he doesn't have any mutas anymore to buffer.
Yeah, the combination of Casper getting a couple drone kills there, and the fact that he has his 3rd base untouched means that he's actually in such a good position. He just has such a sick economy, and he's outpacing the Zerg economy significantly. And Zerg really against mech really relies on that economic advantage that just isn't here this game. So it's not like Jaeyun can outproduce the Terran. They're literally probably going to have very similar production, in which case the Terran mech army is going to be much stronger, obviously, because it's just going to be much more cost efficient. So Casper is actually in a very good spot, mostly off the back of that ninja expand. Jaeyun unfortunately did not scout that, and also Casper with some sick vulture harassment just in general. Look, he's still moving around the map with vultures, making sure Jaeyun's not over expanding, and Jaeyun's kind of stuck on 4 base. Casper's taking his 4th base and has such a sick army. And the thing is, you know, as we get into the higher supply counts here, you know, Casper's getting up to 150 supply, 160 supply. Zerg can't really fight against that without queens. It's funny to say, but queens have really become a staple of this matchup, and you really need them to kind of clear the tank count and even out the fight. And if you don't have them, and if you're just running Hydra Mutalisks at basically a big Terran blob, the Terran blob is gonna absolutely destroy it.
Well, Terran's reached +2 weapon now, and +3 weapons coming in pretty soon. He's up to like 9 factories. The only thing lacking from his army is really vessels. Everything else is fantastic. He's got almost critical mass tanks. He's got 5 right here. So Hydras are really going to be evaporated very quickly. We saw that Jaeyun has started to rebuild his mutas, but one thing that I noticed was he only had +1 armor. Maybe he has +1 weapon about to finish, but he does have +2 armor. So actually they are heavily upgraded, but that's a lot of Goliaths in the army too. I don't know if there's actually going to be enough. Okay, actually that's not a lot of Goliaths. That's only 5. So this is actually going to catch Casper completely off guard. Still, we see 10 more coming in to support these 5 Goliaths, but this is like 30, 40 Mutalisks. This is going to be a big change of the game with this single move. This is going to be the entire army of GrimeBoss, I imagine, getting wiped. Holy moly, that's a lot of mutas.
Yeah, Jaeyun's so smartly transitioning back into Mutalisks because GrimeBoss has had no vessels, and he's getting on top of the Terran mech army, and he's just absolutely going to destroy this army. There's really not much to say here. Casper can't really do anything about it, and the reality is that, you know, going into this stage of the game, like, Mutalisks are actually always good against mech, because Mutalisks actually do fine against Goliaths, right? Like, especially if they're even upgraded. And, you know, just in general, Zerg's gonna have enough resources to afford so many Mutalisks that you just can't keep up with Goliath production. And so once you get into this mid game, you really need to add vessels to your composition. Vessels are really what eventually limit the Zerg from getting out of control in terms of the air production. And GrimeBoss just never actually made vessels this game, and Jaeyun correctly identified, hey look, GrimeBoss, you know, he's only making mech units, he's only making tank vulture Goliaths, he has to balance his army out. I'm just going to overcommit on making Mutalisks and going to completely run him over, and that was the correct call. And suddenly we're talking about how Casper was in such a good position to win this game, and Jaeyun's basically going to clutch it out here, I think.
Well, there is a lot of turrets set up, and there are 9 factory productions, so Goliaths will come out in considerable numbers very quickly. And you got to be careful when you go into mutas, because sure, mutas are great, but they're very expensive. If you go too hard on the mutas and they don't trade effectively, you know, that's 100 minerals, 100 gas every single time going down the drain. It looks like the Goliaths are actually gonna take out these Mutalisks, and they are very high upgraded Goliaths too. They're 3-2, but Hydras at the front wipe out some tanks. Jaeyun has a 20 supply lead, and now he started to switch into Hydra production, and now with the lack of tanks, because he knows there's only Goliaths coming out, this might just be the killing blow for Jaeyun if he can get up critical mass Hydralisk.
Is this Brutal or is this StarCraft 2? Because you look at the production tab and he's doing like 20 plus Hydralisks, just rallying them across the map, and it's just going to be so hard for Casper to really stabilize. The only problem here is that, you know, Jaeyun took that massive advantage and he killed more units as the Radiate is getting researched, so eventually Casper is going to have an answer to kind of the mass air. But Jaeyun, okay, he's going to actually deny 12 o'clock from coming online, so at least he did some economic damage. He did kill the mineral only as well, so, you know, he killed the bases. That's exactly what you need to do. Kind of wasted some time having those Mutalisks fly over the factories, but still got some worthwhile trades there, keeping the Terran army low. And now basically Casper is only on 3 base, but he's about to mine out his natural. I think actually his main is already mined out. So Casper's on 1 base really. Meanwhile, Jaeyun is still on his 5 bases, being Zerg. You know, just Zerg doesn't mine out their bases as much because they can spread out their workers more evenly. So Jaeyun's just in a phenomenal position off the back of that Mutalist switch, and I don't really know what Casper can do.
Well, it looks like T came out for Casper. Not sure what that means. Maybe TT is what he wanted to type out. And I think if Casper had 1 more base, he would still be okay. But the fact that this is now going to be eliminated, and the fact that he's mined out in the main and natural, this is just over now. It's 5 bases versus no base mining pretty much for GrimeBoss. Despite taking the 3rd base for free, GrimeBoss or Jaeyun actually still overwhelmed Casper. Casper's not out yet, but now that it is gonna be split map in favor of Jaeyun, it's almost impossible to recover. There's no chance for GrimeBoss to put on any counterattack pressure to prevent mid left from going to Jaeyun. The really only hope that GrimeBoss can go for is to try and take mid right, just literally camp out the entire game for the rest of for like 30 minutes and try and pull it back. You can see how desperate he is. Floating a command center is going to try and take mid right. So look how many Hydras there are. And they're heavily upgraded too. What are they, like 2-2 right now? But the Terran upgrade is 3-2. So both players really nailing their upgrades. Really impressed with both players. But I think there's just too much Jaeyun.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, Terran, like, Zerg has so many resources to work with. Even if we can imagine like a completely botched attack from Zerg, first of all, the supply lead is so significant that double Ultralisk Cavern, you don't see this every day. Supply lead is so significant that Zerg's gonna trade no matter what. And even then, Zerg's gonna have so much resources to rebuild their army. Meanwhile, Casper kind of pitifully mining off of 1 base. Now, Casper's standing army is still quite impressive. A number of tanks and Goliaths. Actually has a Radiant to work with now, or D-Matrix if he chooses to use that. He's going to float his main command center to take this 4th base, but his army is just not in position. And I feel like Jaeyun can just run here and maybe snipe his command center. And if he snipes this command center, I mean, Casper is not going to have another base for a long time here. And it's just, I mean, there is a world where Casper wins, because look, this army is still scary. He has really good upgrades. He can get some really sick trades if Jaeyun kind of gets complacent and takes the wrong fights, but it's really hard to imagine, you know, Zerg losing from this position. He's even getting consumed, double Ultralisk upgrades and consume in every hive tech thing you could have.
Yeah, and Casper's just broke. He can't afford to even build a command center, so he has to have the best trades possible. And with Dark Swarm, that's just going to eliminate that possibility, because only tanks are going to be able to deal damage under it and irradiate. So this is a really smart move from Jaeyun to transition into Dark Swarm, also going into Ultras. But that's a lot of tanks, even though GrimeBoss or Casper really isn't mining very well. 150 supply uphill with mass tank with a ton of mines and a ton of Goliaths supporting it. He's going to trade very well, but is it too much? Here comes Jaeyun again. The tank line is pretty deep, but unfortunately it's too deep, and that leaves room for the Hydras to just scoot on by into the main, and we already know that they are super heavily upgraded, so these factories may actually get taken down. But this might have been a huge blunder from Jaeyun, because the tanks are shelling out so much damage. About half of the Hydras are already gone. Vultures on the high ground with mines are dealing a decent amount of damage, but still about 25 Hydras remain, not anymore, maybe only like 12, and this all of a sudden is not that bad for Casper. Look how much actual Hydras he killed.
Yeah, and the thing is, Casper is taking another base, but look, Jaeyun's just taking his side of the map, adding more hatcheries. Now, Ultralists are going to come out. The thing is, Ultralists are not very good versus mech, but when you can produce them in such quantities, I mean, the thing is, if you have the economy, they're great. They're just going to, they're a great way to kind of translate a very huge economic lead. But look, Jaeyun doesn't actually have melee upgrades, so these lings are going to take a long time to chew through any Terran units. Still, going to kill these Ultralists. He's going to deny mining. I mean, it really doesn't matter what Zerg does, honestly. The more I look at this, you know, you could talk about how, you know, these Ultralists, they're not really going to do much. but the lead is just so significant for Jaeyun. I mean, we saw yesterday Boa kind of in a similar dominating position against Terror almost through the game a number of times. It's starting to get flashbacks to that, but the thing is here, it's just so much more apparent, the lead that the Zerg has, that it's really just hard for me to even envision a game state where Terran comes back. I think Jaeyun can just do whatever he wants, honestly.
That is a lot of Ultralists, and that's a lot of tanks, but unfortunately it's not going to be enough, especially if Dark Swarm comes down. But Casper's trading about as well as you possibly can, but more Lings supporting it, and yeah, now the Ultras get on top of all the tanks with Dark Swarm. That means the Goliaths can't deal any damage, and this is going to be Jaeyun moving on into the round of 16, taking down Casper. Casper looks very strong though. It may actually be the favorite to come out of the group in second place, but for now, Jaeyun's the one that's going to make it out of Group E. Well, I thought he was. It's for now, the game's not over, but you can see that there really isn't much left for Casper, only 37 workers, and meanwhile, Jaeyun just has like infinite amounts of patries. Lings are trading extremely well, going to take down that tank. Oh, actually, they don't deal any damage because they don't have any upgrades. And +3 wet armor versus when the Lings only deal 5 damage, they only deal 1 damage to that tank. So really, only Ultras and Hydras can deal damage right now.
I mean, I don't even know what to say, Nyokin. This is almost giving me a heart attack. I don't understand why Jaeyun just doesn't make Hydralisks like a, make the units that he's upgraded the whole game. Like, this Ultra Ling, it's still gonna work, but this is the way you throw games. I mean, you can't just switch to a unit that has 0 attack against +3 armor mech. Like, even if the Ultras and the Lings get on top of the mech units, like, this guy could probably just go pure Goliath and kill those units. So just so strange, such a strange tech switch from Jaeyun, when really he could have just massed a bunch of queens, kept going Hydras, kept going Mutalisks even, and instead chooses to go for Ultralists. And it's just so questionable. But at the same time, I mean, I sound like a broken record. It's just so hard to see Zerg losing. It doesn't really matter what Zerg does. Still getting trades. He can trade basically at this point almost 6 to 1 supply. He could take like a 60 supply deficit trade for like 10 supply of Terran units, and the production is such that he's still going to come out on top. So it's just so hard for Casper to do anything now. He's doing what he can do, which is basically keep making units, stay on these bases, put down mines. But look, if Jaeyun just decided to make Mutalisks, if he decided to make anything but Ultra Ling, he would instantly win the game. But he's sticking to this Ultra Ling. I'm waiting to see for it actually to bust down at some point, this Terran kind of choke, but still, he's probably only going to have +1 melee at this point. That's just such a weird game suddenly.
Well, Jaeyun's trying to find the correct path, because clearly the high ground to the third base is not the route to take. There's so many tanks there. I think he needs to just go for the main again like he did with the Hydras earlier. Look how far forward those tanks are. They don't support any of the Ultras if they just run directly into the main. Another drop, gonna try and get in there, but it's already denied. And as you were saying, trades like we've been seeing are how you throw the game. If Jaeyun wants to... Okay, here we go. This is going to be the Ultras trying to just end the game right here. So many coming in. Drops going into... Okay, he just runs by, as I said. Dark Swarm going to come in, get on top of those tanks too. So those are going to be eliminated. And now, with Ultra Ling into your main, there's no armor on these factories. So even if Lings don't have any upgrades, these factories are all going to be eliminated. Also, potentially going to supply block him. And now, I think finally, we have the killing blow into Casper.
Yeah, I mean, now Casper basically won't be able to produce anymore. He still has a decent standing army defending his bases, but who cares about your economy if you can't actually spend it? And Casper's going to have to come back to defend, but Jaeyun has just so many units. Dark Swarm on top of the mech units. Ultra Ling all over the map, coming in and out, even into GrimeBoss's mineral only. There's still some mines there. Look, those Lings can barely kill a Goliath. It's just, Lings are so pitiful when they don't have any attack upgrade or attack damage, and mech units are just so sturdy with that +3 armor. So, it's still gonna take a while here. Casper can still hold on just through the power of his units, Again, Jaeyun at any time could just make Hydralisk or Mutalisk and this game would be over, but sticking to Ultra Ling, and yeah, there we go, GrimeBoss finally with the GG.
So Casper is going to tap out, and Jaeyun is going to move on to the round of 16, but it wasn't easy. And Casper looks surprisingly good and looks like he might be the actual second favorite to make it out of Group G. I think we're in Group G. Yes. So many groups, man. Like, not used to having this many groups.